Hi, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is RegWatch by regulatorwatch.com. I am not certain whether or not if we are live. We'll soon know. There we go. Yes, we are live. Thank goodness. So only on YouTube, though, tonight, right now, for this particular episode of RegWatch. And what are we doing? Well, we were just on the air for about an hour or so with Shai Beckman, the CEO and founder of Dash Vapes, which is one of the largest e-liquid manufacturers and distributors and retailers in Canada. And obviously, there's a lot of stake Canadian businesses have in what's going on in the U.S., but we weren't able to spend a lot of time talking about the news that happened today, well, actually really yesterday, but then the fallout today, which was just glorious. And I wanted to make sure that we did spend some time doing that. Now, I had been putting together a feature article. We don't do a lot of, quote unquote, print pieces on RegWatch. We are video, we are television, and that's, what we do. But for years and years and years, I've written for mainstream media, mostly political opinion, before the social justice warriors went crazy. I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm not anymore. So when it comes to actually writing stuff, I do enjoy doing that. And so there had been brewing a good feature article on Trump and just the whole lung illness and everything going on down in the US. So I spent some time over the last couple of days and banged something out with a little update on it today after we found out that indeed the Trump vape ban is dead. And normally I would be doing some kind of a video basically reading it out. And I thought, well, why not just flick the gear on and read this out to you guys. And then if you've got maybe some questions or whatever, I'll be able to take those. So a bit casual, unloosen the tie. It's one of those. And I'm just going to bang my way. Now, I write this when I'm writing for reading. That's one way. And then when I'm writing for speaking, that's another. So I'm going to be trying to bridge the gap here in terms of that with the actual read. But if you have watched RegWatch enough, and heard my writing and speaking, I'm guaranteed that there will be some sound and tone to what I say and how I write this in the piece. You should be able to recognize it. Now, there we go. I don't have my program out monitor, so I'm not certain whether or not if things actually made it over to the interwebs properly here. So if you go to regulatorwatch.com, that's our main website, and some of you may not go there on a regular basis because you interact with RegWatch on social channels, and that's fine and that's great. Our main website though is where everything goes. It's where we curate articles to, and then we push them out from that site out on social. And we do from time to time, when we get a chance, we actually do curate and are concerned with issues outside of vaping. And at some point, you'll be introduced to those issues and our position on them. Some of them you may agree with, and some of them you may not. But let's just start. We're going to do a little bit of a read through here. And this is Trump Trap. Did progressives overreach on vape ban? And just like that, the Trump flavor ban is dead. But for a heart-wrenching 2 months, it appeared otherwise. After decades evangelizing the evils of smoking, 5 years of pumping the dangers of e-cigarettes and vaping, and following 12 months of Juul-inspired hysteria over the so-called youth vaping epidemic, President Trump and the American public were primed to fall for one of the biggest public health lies of all time: vaping kills. Before the big lie could take hold, progressives had to contend with the growing and pesky consensus that vaping is 95% less harmful than smoking, vaping is an effective tool to quit smoking, and that vaping saves lives. Officials at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration searched diligently for a pretext to shift vaping's positive narrative, and that pretext presented itself in the form of a mysterious lung illness ready-made to be exploited as corroborating evidence in the years-long effort to prove public health warnings about the dangers of e-cigarettes and vaping. By late August, reports of several deaths associated with the mysterious so-called vaping-related lung illness exploded across the media. In a matter of weeks, hysteria over vaping led to a wholesale attack on vapers and the vaping industry. Bans on flavored vaping products were enacted by executive fiat in numerous U.S. states, and currently bans are under consideration in Canada as well. President Trump entered the fray on September 11th with a typically ill-advised announcement from the Oval Office that his administration would institute a national ban and clear the market of flavored vaping products. Trump made the announcement flanked by First Lady Melania Trump and acting FDA Commissioner Ned Sharpless. But behind the scenes loomed the CDC, where officials hyped the hysteria by concealing critical facts which would have exonerated nicotine vaping products from the scare. Simply, the lung illnesses were vaping-related, but while thousands had fallen sick and dozens had died, the culprit was not nicotine vaping. The illnesses were a result of vaping illicit black market cannabis products, not legal nicotine vaping products. As early as September 6, reports in the media identified illicit THC vaping products as a cause of the lung illnesses. The public should have been warned then about the dangers of vaping cannabis products. Instead, CDC falsely conflated nicotine vaping as the cause and warned the public to stop using e-cigarettes and nicotine vaping products altogether. Millions of people were scared into giving up vaping, and many likely returned to smoking. CDC obfuscated for months, and only on November 8 did it announce a breakthrough correctly identifying tainted illicit cannabis products as the cause. How many people needlessly fell sick or even died as a result of CDC deception, only time will tell. Surely, CDC's inaction over the crisis will go down as one of the biggest public health scandals in American history. No crisis should ever go to waste is the motto of many totalitarian thinkers. That's a whole book in and of itself. Members of the tobacco control mafia played their part supporting the CDC in stoking fear, feeding the media beast, and pressuring lawmakers to take action. Truth Initiative, Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network, American Heart Association, American Lung Association, Truth Initiative, California Tobacco Control Program, Bloomberg, and Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes all called for sweeping vaping bans on vaping products. Each pitted the interests of children over those of adults, and in a twisted display of moral righteousness and virtue signaling. I kind of, a tiny little bit, the verklempt there, only because the actual real language I want to use in that section to describe these organizations and these people, I can't put on air. I mean, there's just, I have so much venom reserved for these shiny suit social justice warriors. They wear shiny suits, but they're no better than the thugs on the street. So at this point, re-enter Trump. Surrounded on all sides by braying progressives demanding that he take immediate action to save America's children, the president, seemingly caught like a deer in headlights, calculated that a national ban on flavored vaping products would engender goodwill and generate social capital with a voting demographic most adverse to his presidency, soccer moms. It was a trap. Say what you want about progressives, they are strategic. Progressives knew something Trump and his advisors clearly didn't know at the time, and that is a ban on flavored vaping products would disproportionately affect Trump supporters. Nobody has better information about who smokes and vapes, where they live, how they are employed, what they earn, and who they might likely vote for than tobacco control. It took fine investigative work by Paul Blair from Americans for Tax Reform to raise alarm within the White House, the Trump campaign, and with Republicans on Capitol Hill. Blair meticulously demonstrated that in each of the key swing states which Trump won by the slimmest of margins in 2016, those margins who in 2020, those vapors who are likely single-issue voters, they smashed those vote margins by hundreds of thousands in some of the states. It was really quite astonishing. I mean, you've all seen these numbers. It's just fantastic. Well, reality began to sink in. A vape ban could cost Trump the presidency. Pile on the daunting realization that a national flavored vaping ban annihilates 14,000 small businesses, throws 150,000 Americans out of work, creates havoc for families and local communities, and destroys an entrepreneur-led, American-made, multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. In addition, a ban would constitute a gigantic regulatory intervention into the personal lives of millions of Americans. None of this sounded like the promise of a Trump presidency. When progressives set a trap, they set it well. Faced with growing pressure from vapers that flooded White House phone lines with tens of thousands of polite yet firm appeals for the president to abandon his vaping ban, and with growing concern voiced by Brad Parscale, the campaign manager for Trump's 2020 re-election campaign, Trump awoke and finally recognized the trap. You know, it should have been obvious for the president at the outset to realize that the very same people pressuring him to enact a vaping ban are his enemy on every single other issue that's important to his presidency. Surely, public health is part of the progressive deep state. FDA and CDC are bastions in the unaccountable regulatory apparatus that's deeply antagonistic to the president's agenda. Trump probably thought, crap. Trump must have asked himself, why would I think FDA and CDC are any different than the State Department or the intelligence services? The deep state doesn't have my interests or the interests of my supporters at heart on any issue. Why should I believe them now? Come to think of it, why didn't my HHS secretary and FDA commissioner inform me that there were two sides to the debate, and then brief me about how countries like Canada, and especially the UK, have made vaping products legal and fully endorse them as vital tools to help people quit smoking? I think I've been lied to. Why didn't my political team clue into the fact that arch-enemy Michael Bloomberg is the single biggest private funder of anti-vaping propaganda? I mean, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. That's huge. Why didn't I notice that vaping bans are a Democratic issue? How come my political advisors didn't wake up to the fact that a dozen Democratic senators have been writing letters and harping at the FDA to ban vaping products for years? Why didn't my media team point out the same fake news organizations and mainstream media that lie about me day in and day out are the same peddlers of vaping misinformation and hysteria? Why didn't my economic advisors inform me about the huge American success story that the vaping business has become and what the impact would be if I launched a vaping ban? And worst of all, how could my public health team stand in the Oval Office and tell me straight to my face that e-cigarettes are responsible for the horrendous lung deaths gripping the nation, and that I had to protect the American public? I have to issue orders to remove millions of nicotine products from the market, while knowing all along it was pot products responsible for the illness. Trump recognized the enemy. It must have stung when Trump finally realized that he had been led by the nose into announcing a vaping ban. Typically, Trump is very astute in recognizing common traits among the enemies he shares across various issues. How could he have misconstrued vaping opponents as allies? I chalk it up to his lifelong aversion to substance use. Trump has never consumed alcohol or smoked. He watched his older brother drink himself to death. And it's a 200-year-old maxim of the temperance movement that tobacco use leads to drunkenness. Also, it's certain that over his years in the construction business, he's lost employees who smoke, if not loved ones, to cancer and heart disease. Trump likely thought he'd be saving lives with a vaping products ban. I mean, that's pretty simple. I mean, if you can just think, I mean, if he's not a ghoul, if he's somebody with a heart, he thought he was doing something right, because that's what he was told. Lung illnesses and death are essential to the progressive plan. Public health and its allies in the tobacco control mafia desperately needed to bully the president into ordering a national ban on vaping products. It had to be now, before the truth came out about how the CDC purposefully deceived the public over the cause of the vaping-related lung illnesses, and how the government agency could be found complicit in dozens of recent deaths and potentially millions more when those scared from vaping back to smoking began dying of cancer and smoking-related diseases. The lung illness hysteria offered a genuine opportunity to forever destroy the virtues of vaping by shifting the risk profile of nicotine vaping from less harmful to as deadly or deadlier than smoking. Time was of the essence for progressives to realize this shift, as the realities of FDA's pre-market tobacco application process means, come May 2020, the entire U.S. vaping industry will be demolished anyway. By design, FDA's PMTA process is guaranteed to annihilate 14,000 small businesses and throw 150,000 Americans out of work, extinguish 95% of U.S. e-juice manufacturing, and destroy adult access and choice to vaping products. Come May, during an election year, FDA would be responsible for wholesale destruction and upheaval in thousands of communities across the nation. How could the government agency justify such heavy-handed regulatory action? Indeed, how could they enforce it? FDA and its progressive partners desperately, hysterically needed to pin real death onto nicotine vaping in order to be able to shut the entire industry down next May. It's simply inconceivable how the regulator could have implemented the clearing of the market of vaping products without a PMTA unless there was a public health emergency underway. Yet, there was a limit on how long progressives could extend good fortune, as people would need to keep dying between now and next May in order to extend the lung illness hysteria. It's not possible, even for progressives, to continue the slaughter of innocents for that long. This is why at this exact moment, progressives pushed the president so hard to implement the vaping ban. They needed him to do the dirty work they would be unable to do in May, and that is to finish the hit job on vaping, unless they could scare up some other kind of national health emergency. Trump's vaping ban is dropped. In welcome news, the White House announced on November 17th, and that is yesterday, that the Trump flavor ban is dead. Concern over jobs in critical battleground states played a determining role in the decision. As Reason.com reports, officials said the blowback to Trump's vow to ban most flavored e-cigarettes had rattled him. In an aggressive social media campaign, hashtag I vape, I vote, advocates claimed the ban would shut down thousands of shops, eliminating jobs and sending vapors back to cigarettes. The president saw protesters at events and read critical articles. His campaign manager, Brad Parscale, privately warned the ban could hurt him in battleground states, said a person who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations. Trump was now upset with Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar and had taken the lead in rolling out the plan, said three officials familiar with the discussions. I wrote all the stuff Trump thinking about HHS Secretary and FDA, all that. I wrote all of that on Friday. So I could see into the mind of the president. In anticipation of the president backtracking on the proposed ban, Greg, and I'm not even going to, Hafley, the director of federal relations for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, told Bloomberg on November 15th that, quote, with every day of delay, our kids are picking up these products and becoming addicted, close quote. And that, quote, we want Congress or the FDA to permanently remove the flavors from the market that we know are used to target kids and act in the interest of public health, close quote. A new trap is laid. So, if the impact of flavor bans on jobs is so great today and must be avoided, what would be different come May 2020 when FDA moves to enforce rules regarding the PMTA? The answer, there is no difference. The same detrimental impact on jobs, the economy, and on the health and well-being of vapors awaits. What's different is the opportunity now afforded to the vaping industry. In a monumental overreach, progressives inflated and distorted a genuine public health crisis in order to shove vaping onto the lap of the president with the hopes of fooling him into signing a national vaping ban. What happened instead is that the president awoke to the issue and could, with the right help,
become a strong ally to vaping. That is, if the vaping industry does not walk itself into a well-worn trap: complacency. Yes, it is conceivable that with no additional cannabis-related vaping deaths for the CDC to egregiously attribute to nicotine vaping, and considering that the public has a short attention span, the environment could reset to pre-lung scare era. But what then? The vaping industry still faces an intransigent and grotesquely overfunded opposition, and the FDA has proven time and again to be incapable of delivering anything but an industry-killing regulatory pathway. The only path forward is for the vaping industry to take up the reins and devise a third way that involves the shrining steps already taken by Juul and other big tobacco brands to limit youth access, while at the same time providing an easier, cost-effective path for e-juice manufacturers to stay on the market. At a minimum, the vaping industry must fight for its life on removing the PMTA requirement that all vaping products must demonstrate a net benefit to public health. Let me repeat that because this is critical. At minimum, the vaping industry must fight for its life on removing the PMTA requirement that all vaping products must demonstrate a net benefit to public health. The U.S. vaping industry must not sit on its laurels and wait for the FDA to improve its guidance. It's just not going to happen. The industry must now embrace Trump. Okay, somebody sent the police after me here. All right. Just as I'm making that last push, tobacco control is like, no, no. The U.S. vaping industry must not sit on its laurels and wait for the FDA to improve its guidance. It's not going to happen. The industry must now embrace Trump and deliver to him a reasonable plan that allows e-juice companies to stay in operation, for retail shops to stay open, and that also protects the public and keeps devices out of the hands of kids. It's always in the worst of times that the greatest of opportunities present themselves. This could be one of those times, and Trump is that opportunity, whether you like him or not. That's certainly true. Well, as a longtime Trump supporter, I have to tell you, he pushed me over the last couple of months. I was like, you've got to be kidding me, because obviously one look around and his enemy on everything, how could he side? How could he not see it, right? So hats off to all of the vaping advocates that organized events and everything else that really forced in front of them. Hats off to every single vapor that made that phone call to the White House, sometimes once, twice, three times, sometimes to the point of the Secret Service showing up at their door. I don't know if that really actually happened, but I would have, maybe, it might have. But no, seriously, this is a, knock on wood, this is a win, guys. This is a total win. Now, it's not a, it was more than a skirmish. It was a battle. This was a battle one. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely, I mean, obviously it's not the war one. It is trying to get my Civil War numbers. Whatever that first war, the first battle that Lincoln finally won, that was seen as the turning point, or the first one, because they lost so many. The Union lost so many. Maybe I'll get that from... what if Trump gets impeached? Would Pence pass any vapor laws? That's a question from John Haymaker. All right, so... Okay, well, first of all, the presidents are not supposed to be passing any vapor laws at all, anyhow. So it was definitely... it was definitely not, this was more of an executive order, and it was more through the regulatory apparatus. It's not a law. So that's not the case of what was going to happen here. Trump was never going to pass a law. He's the president. He can't pass laws. That's the only Congress can pass laws. But that being said, it makes it worse when it's not a law and it's actually a regulatory action, because that's a non-legislative mechanism that's arguably unaccountable. However, though, if the president is issuing an order to to one of his regulatory agencies, and they follow that order because he is actually the only one that's elected in the entire executive branch. They all work for him. So that actually, I mean, that's valid, right? You can take it up with him at the polls. And so you saw a true democracy in action in the sense that a policy was floated out that was pushed on the president. The president floated it out, and the pushback happened from people. And because of the nature of the president, the nature of how he won last time, the precariousness of his election in 2020, the timing that this year he is 2020 in the election, he's being impeached. So things actually operated exactly how they should in the U.S. There's only one person that is accountable in the entire executive branch, and that's the president. And that's why if you look at the president's actions, say with regard to the Ukraine, and you believe he should be impeached, well, you're insane. If you're a vapor, you're insane. If you are a legitimate vapor, right, for real, not a fake and phony one, but a real vapor, regardless of whatever you think of Trump politically, if you think that the Ukraine issue is something he should be impeached over, you're an imposter. You're just insane. You don't understand politics at all, because there's only one person in the entire executive branch that's accountable to the people, and that's the president. And the entire executive branch, that's the State Department, that's the intelligence services, the FBI, all of it, everything. They all report to him. They serve at the pleasure of the president. He can yell at them, he can fire them, he can do whatever he wants. So, so he's upset about the Ukrainian ambassador and he fired her and some nonchalant. All this stuff is just insane. And so remember that the people who are pushing this stuff are the same people, the Democrats and the progressives, that are pushing the lies about vaping. How, you don't have to like the Republicans. I don't. You don't have to like the president. I don't particularly like him much. I mean, I don't have a fondness for him or anything like that. But it's all the same enemy. You have to do what the president has done. And that's woke up and said, shit, my enemies on vaping, who are they? Oh my God, they're also the same people that are screaming about this issue and this issue and this issue. And then realize you might be on the wrong side of those issues. Something to think about. So no, I don't think we have anything to worry about Pence, John. The fact of the matter is that in impeachment, so if they actually vote for impeachment in Congress, in the House, the Senate would still have to, or two-thirds majority, pass that. And that's just not going to happen, right? So that's just, so I don't understand the thing about Pence. Remember, that's from the left. The left hate Pence. And so, and because of course he's religious, right? So they hate him. So, all right. Any other questions here? Yes, Michelle, what the CDC and FDA did to those young people, letting them continue to be injured and some killed, is criminal. Someone needs to answer for this crime. You are so correct. It's a crime. It certainly is a crime. Fred Wilson Jr., why doesn't President Trump put a ban as a public health announcement prohibiting cigarette sales, since it kills? Cigarettes can't be banned. For one thing, in the United States, there are limits to what you can do in terms of, legislative authority, because it's the land of the free, thank God, right? There are inalienable rights that human beings have. Let me explain rights, okay? There's two ways that you look at rights. There's positive rights and there's negative rights. Negative rights are the rights that you have because you are a breathing, sentient being on this planet, and that we all have. Now, that's not the rights to the bathroom or all of those other stupid human rights that keep getting added to the calendar of positive rights. Positive rights are the UN's rights. All positive rights are any right that a government, a governing body, can pass and create the right. And if they can create the right, they can take the right away, by the way. Right? So those are positive rights. I know it's weird, positive, negative, this and that. But those are positive rights. And those are fake rights. They are the explosion of rights that we live under. All these rights are what's bringing down humanity because they carve people up. It's the intersectionality of rights. That's what it is, right? So it's just this forever dividing people and separating people based on rights. I mean, that's unbelievable. So natural rights, the Aristotle view of rights, are negative rights. Those are the naturally occurring human rights. And then you've got leftist rights, which are the rights that everybody thinks that they enjoy today, which are just, you know, anything passed by government. And so that's the issue here right now is that we've got a scenario where adults, us, have a right to stick stuff in our own bodies, right? And they're telling us we don't have that right. Then they're saying we don't have that right, not because of the damage we're doing to our own body, but because of the precedent we're setting for the children, or because of having access to those products for us as adults. It leaves open the opportunity for access to young people. So they must take our rights away in order to protect the... It is just so freaking convoluted. And so brutal because, of course, you know, nobody asks the kids to have any responsibility in this matter, right? The left, progressives, I repeat myself, so I shall just say the progressive left over and over and over again is just they idolize the youth, and they believe that the youth. Well, look at Greta, idiot, climate change person. I mean, they're worshiping her like she's a saint, literally a saint, or a messiah, more a messiah, not just a saint. And that's wrapped up in the whole youth thing. What makes you think that a 16-year-old has any comprehension of these issues any more than a 40-year-old that might be educated and working in the EPA? I mean, come on. It's just, but it happens time and again, over and over and over again, issue after issue. And that's just happening here in vaping in the same manner, right? So what? 16-year-olds are supposed to be allowed to vote. That's what the progressive left is pushing right now. They're supposed to be old enough to vote at 16 to choose the president and to vote, because that's how good youth are. They are so responsible. They are so knowledgeable. They're so got their shit together to such an extent that they have to vote. That is huge. They got to do that. How can you do that to the kids? Yet these are the same kids that can't control themselves around an e-cigarette. Goes out and seeks and finds it. Knowingly becomes addicted to it. Sticks 5 of them in their mouth and huffing them on YouTube. It's just beyond belief. So that's what you got to see. So if a person, you know, argues that a kid should be allowed to vote at 16, stop listening to them. Or if you do, you're not a real vapor. You're just a follow along. You're somebody who doesn't care about vaping. You're somebody who doesn't understand the issues, the forces that are aligned against you and your vaping. So you're better off for every vapor around you that you put down your vape pen or well, it's likely a vape pen because you don't understand vaping, and just walk away. Just walk away. So think about that. You should ask around the people you know. Do you think 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote? If you think they should be allowed to vote, well, yeah, that's pretty bad, man. That's pretty bad if you still think that. If you still think 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote, you've got some pretty big cognitive dissonance going on there, son or daughter. All right, guys. So that was just a little bit of me getting some fodder for losing some viewers. Let me see if I can find something else here, and let's see what other questions I've got. It's got this great book that it just came, you know, and I'm always into my older books, right? But I always like finding stuff from the 1990s because that was at the heart of the anti-tobacco battle. And this is For Your Own Good, The Anti-Smoking Crusade and the Tyranny of Public Health. And the author is Jacob Sullum. And Jacob Sullum, then as now, is a senior writer at Reason.com. Now, he wasn't the author of the Reason quote that I used in today's piece, but he has been all over RegWatch because his stuff you've definitely seen. If you've seen anything from Reason that's on vaping, it's 9 out of 10 chance it's been from Jacob. And then, of course, Guy Bentley from Reason. We caught up with him in Washington, D.C. at the D.C. rally and interviewed him, which you can find on our YouTube channel and on Facebook, and of course on our main website. So the folks at Reason are fantastic. And so Jacob, who's still writing, just knocking it out of the park today with regards to what's going on with vaping, here he is writing one of the definitive books on the public health tyranny of the anti-tobacco movement in the 1990s. So, and I just literally got this, so I don't have this well marked out and I don't have it scanned. But let's just see here. So he's described, he's 5 years older than me. So he's talking about how, like in this section, in 1965, was it in 65? Or maybe it was in the early 70s. Either way, it doesn't matter. He was old enough that he's already running around and he's telling his parents what to do. And so yeah, I think it was like 78 or something like that. And so, and he was stamping his feet trying to get his dad to quit smoking cigars. And he was making signs and doing all the little, Nazi things that the tobacco control people brainwash and program kids to do. And so he was describing that in this piece, but just one second. Yeah, it's too bad. So I'll have this better marked because I just had it next to me. I wasn't planning on reading it. So as John Stuart Mill famously put it, quote, "The sole end for which mankind are warranted, individually or collectively, in interfering with the liberty of action of any of their number is self-protection." Right. So as John Stuart Mill famously put it, I'm sure it's been put in a little more colloquial terms, the sole end for which mankind are warranted, individually or collectively, in interfering with the liberty of action of any of their number is self-protection. The only purpose for which power can rightfully be exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others. His own good, either physical or moral, is not a sufficient warrant. This principle rules out the use of coercion, which includes taxes and regulations, as well as the criminal law, to discourage people from engaging in risky habits. With the freedom to make such choices, however, comes the obligation to accept responsibility for the consequences. And that is what smokers do, and that's what we do. We'll accept the responsibility of the consequences for our own action, but how are we supposed to accept the responsibility for 5 million teenagers that are idiots, right? I can't accept any responsibility for them, and don't hold me responsible for their actions, right? And do not use force, which is exactly what this entire debate is about, is force. Like in the end, how do they force it? They got to enforce it with force, with threat of jail, threat of harm to your body. They will break your arm to get you to no longer be a vapor, if that's the case. It's just unbelievable. All right. Who the FCK smokes fruit? Dave? Well, first of all, no one smokes anything if it's vapor. All right, kids. Well, I can see that nobody in here, at least that I can see right now, reacted with any kind of real pain for me telling them to pick up their marbles and go home if they are faux vapors. Impeach Trump. Joe Rogan is a robot. Joe Rogan is a robot. That is just priceless to have that just, yeah, he is, you know, he really is. Yeah, no, totally. Well, awesome, kids. Well, I think that's it. I want to thank you very much for joining us on this, you know, impromptu RegWatch ×2 today. And that is it. So before you head off, please make sure you go to support.regulatorwatch.com, dig into your wallet, find a few dollars, kick them over to us. You know you'll be happy that you did it. We will be too. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For regulatorwatch.com, I'm Brent Stafford.